23 is a firecracker year, the year of letting go.
This year is a 7-year, pulling away from the external and really going within and finding out, who am I? Some of the things that if we haven't been able to let them go or transform them or dissolve them, they will just be ripped away.
We're all focusing on raising vibration because we know that reconnecting it's the only game in town.
Reconnection through the abstinence.
The very first thing, before they even get into the spiritual energetic, they're going to need to detox. So yeah, I think that what you guys are doing is going to become so important for just anyone who's going to be on the journey is going to have to do this first.
That's kind of what a master does on the planet, is go for experience, get the wisdom and release it, let it.
That's the disconnection I think that we as a species have developed from Mother Earth itself.
A crumbling of the entire system, because the entire system is created on disconnection. We need a change that realign with what we are made for. Is something that is not matching the internal DNA. Once you get rid of toxin, reconnect with your intuition, and then you start to reconnect with your master, that is yourself.
This eclipse season coming up is a rather intense one, so I think it's really interesting that this is going to go on right when you're doing the detoxes. It's a complete reset. Is going to be in Aries, and it's going to be on the 19th and 20th, and sometimes you really can't even get to that seed of yourself and what really you want to do and you love until you cut those things out and really find out who you are. So this particular new moon solar eclipse is going to be a lot about finding out who you are, what lights you up. Aries is fire-based. If something doesn't light you up, cut it. Aries also, in terms of medical astrology, rules over the brain.
Aries is always this frontal zone, not is the one that initiate and one that enter, and is the one that get frozen in case of addiction. That's why the importance of cutting this cord with the addiction allow the frontal cortex, the Aries. That's why it's so exciting to go and clean in parallel with this big master helping us, because it's actually allow the frontal cortex to be free on its own, taking decision and choose the direction, give you that space to understand who you are.
All of a sudden you don't have that chocolate bar to hold on to, but it's just letting go of that for a while, coming back to yourself, coming back inside. As I continue the detox journey, wow, like the brain's repairing, and wow, like the stem cells are regrowing. We can no longer have the luxury of doubt. Absolutely nothing to even vaguely fear. And the more you lean into that change and the more you let go of the doubt, truly the more beautiful this journey becomes. And I'll start off with just a little bit of background as to how I found you, Aurora. I found you online, and I've always been interested in astrology. It's been an interesting thing for me because, you know, when I was growing up, my mom used to have these magazines in South Africa that was called the You magazine. Okay. But it's like trashy. It's like
Yeah.
People magazine, right? And I would page in that and I would read those kind of little star sign things, and and then that was kind of my first introduction to astrology back in the day.
Yep.
And then I was like, this is all a load of malarkey, this is not the real deal. And then a friend of mine kind of said to me, Mish, have you started kind of getting back into a bit more astrology at all? And she started to share some stuff with me. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. And then when I started to listening to the astrologers, and they were saying, no, this is an actual science. And I was like, wow, okay, this is for reals, interesting. So it's an actual science. And then the interesting part is, Aurora, when I moved to Ibiza, this world is fascinating because one of the first things that you get asked when you meet new people is, what star sign are you?
That's so funny.
Which I thought was hilarious, because I thought, once I'd moved from London, I thought, wow, my, how my life has changed. In London or in South Africa, you get asked, what school are you from, or what university did you go to, or where did you grow up, or whatever. But in Ibiza, you get asked, what's your star sign? And so I was wondering maybe if we could just kick off, because obviously astrology is your bag. We'll tell folks a little bit more about double detox in a sec, but I'm really curious from your perspective, just maybe tell us a little bit about how you got into astrology, one, and then also how is it a science? Like what's the kind of history, or kind of how do we make astrology real for us as such?
Yeah, so I feel that everyone who goes on a spiritual journey of sorts, I've always said there's a million ways to crack an egg. And for some, it begins with things like health, right? Health and wellness and the body and food. And for others, it's maybe they have a spiritual experience and it opens them up to something else. And for me, it was astrology. So I I actually started really becoming interested in it when I was about 17 or 18.
Okay.
So for the past, I don't even know how old I am now, but so for the past like
Yeah.
6
I don't
years,
even know how old I am anymore. Yeah, talk about timelines collapsing.
right? I like forget. So for about the past like 16 years or so, I basically self-studied. So I've never taken professional courses. I didn't understudy under an astrologer. I was always a reader. I enjoy reading, and that's how I learn. So I just self-studied for about the past 16 years, or started being able to read charts. And so I would just read anyone and everyone's chart who would let me.
Yeah.
and to get to learning the kind of technical side of it. So what I have gathered through my journey with astrology was there is the technical science-based aspect in which it is based on astronomy, which
Yeah.
is a very particular science. So, they they measure how far away the planets, the stars are, their orbits, how their orbits affect us, etc. So there is that whole science of the kind of astronomy aspect.
Mm.
And I think over the course of my kind of spiritual journey, I started becoming, I would say, more of an intuitive astrologer, which is where I started to really look at, okay, what do the signs actually mean, right?
Mm.
What do the signs and the planets actually mean to us? And I started to realize that two things I find really interesting that are two little niches of astrology that I enjoy. One is historical astrology. So
Mm.
it's looking at the different time periods throughout history and looking at the different planetary movements, and you will see that it creates cycles, patterns.
Yeah.
And so it's almost exact to when we have big astrological movements, we will have a big sort of historical event. The other is medical astrology, which I find is very helpful as well, because they dive into, basically when your energetics are not aligned, it'll present as a pain or an illness or something of that. And they can use the planets to kind of align you to, healing work and things. So I find those two very fascinating. And I realize that the signs and the planets are archetypes.
Mm.
They're archetypes of consciousness that we humans embody.
Yeah.
And, we all each have a unique set of kind of these archetypes that blend together. So where I am now with it is I do enjoy the technical side sometimes, but now I'm more into the intuitive aspect, where I've realized that the planets and the stars themselves are conscious beings, just like we are. They have a spirit within them. And so we can actually communicate with them in a sense, or work with the planetary movements. So it's not so much like, I think the horoscopes are funny because it's not so much that the planets are going to predict anything, but they will show you a pattern, and they will show you a certain particular energy or archetype that they are bringing, and you can work with it instead of it kind of being, a surprise, or, not really understanding why certain things are happening in your life at certain times. And so I see it as a kind of very cool blend of an art form and a science, and to allow it to evolve into whatever is most helpful for what humans need.
Yeah. Yeah, and I must say, when I started grooving with astrology, one of the most helpful things to learn about was Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
Because I used to work in software, and for those folks who don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, please keep me honest on anything astrology here, Aurora, because I might get things wrong, but Mercury retrograde is said to kind of really mess things up technologically, and things will just not work, and you're like, whoa, what's happening? And it just wouldn't work. And we would have, I used to work in software, as I said, and we would have our service desk like just messaging, and clients are calling in going, things are like blowing up, and it was inexplicable, or my phone would not work, or whatever it is. And so I was like, wow, okay, Mercury retrograde, that's interesting. And like Stru's, Bob, it always happened. Each Mercury retrograde is like, something technical would happen. And so what that allowed me to do was kind of calm my energy and not kind of lose my rag when something wasn't working, if you like, back in the old days. So there was a bit of it, so and that's when I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And so Erika, I wanted to kind of get your take on perhaps just your view on astrology, because when we first met, Erika was straight away, she's like, Mish, what's your star sign? All of this. But I know, Erika, you love a lot of the numerology stuff as well, because Erika's Italian, and there's a lot of great Italian astronomers and just kind of general philosophers. So
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Well, everything, as you were saying before, that create a pattern so you can observe something that is interesting. It's something for me that call my attention.
Yeah.
So numerology as astrology, because they go very close one to each other, so because they somehow the orbits are geometric designs. So this geometry have a repetition in a spiralic form. It's just we add the dimension respect of the paper that we sometimes study, because everything is in motion in even a third dimension that we'd never considered. A little bit more fun. But for me, astrology and numerology, they work together, and many times I have more perception, so it's an intuition of something going on planetary wise. And here in Ibiza is quite fun, because we are in many, let's say, with the channel open. And so we say, what's going on in the planet? And then someone knows the news, like, for example, let's say Mercury retrograde, or two planets that are connecting. For a lot of people, a certain kind of work or pattern is coming out. So, for example, someone is dealing with his anger and passion, because probably two big planets, or Venus or Mars, are working together. And this is a little bit how it's fun right now, to know the planet, the entire history of the Greek mythology is also based on the planetary story, and they were trying to teach to people to be aware of this movement, and then to catch like the bus, to catch on time this kind of wave, this kind of energy wave, to then dealing with certain pattern, or then release, or then work with certain or problematic or thematic in each life. Because if you do it by surfing the wave of the movement of this big personality, let's call it, then you make your life easier.
Yes.
That's the way I use and the way I collaborate with the planet. Also, because we are moving with them, so it would be absurd to feel disconnected even from them. So it's a little bit funny, the approach of who is making fun about astrology. Of course, you don't have to give up your life to someone that is reading. That's the funny part. That's the religious part. But it's a tool like many others, and will be stupid to don't open your mind and your heart to use everything that is in your highest benefit for your evolution. So why not?
Exactly. I agree. I always find it funny when, there is a lot. I think in the West, there's a bit more of that resistance to these tools and and these modalities. And it is funny because exactly as you said, why would we be disconnected from the planets? We live on a planet, so we're all working together in some way. And if we can speak that language, that intuitive language, we can align ourselves exactly like with the Greek mythology, align ourselves with the highest and best ways to ride that energy. Why wouldn't we? Make our lives easier?
Exactly. Well, there is so in Ibiza, there's a very small part of the island that is very focused on kind of clubbing scene. And for those folks who don't know Ibiza really, it's a very small part of the island that's focused in that world. But you chat to some of the bouncers, and they say every full moon, and I know the moon's not necessarily a planet, but it does affect the whole planetary alignments and stuff. But every full moon, the bouncers are like, yeah, that's crazy town. That's when the crazies come out. And they always kind of on more high alert because they said, there's always issues around full moon, which I have to laugh at. But interestingly, here on Ibiza, you can really feel the moon. And I know that sounds a bit like strange, but I feel like the moon has been getting stronger. And in Ibiza, you kind of can really feel the waves. It almost like it feels like the moon is a lot closer. But not only that, just kind of drawing back to the archetypes, there is a goddess on the island, and her name is Tanit. We've actually got a cave, and people for many thousands of years, actually, and this is dating back to before Ibiza became kind of a dance island, if you like. But many thousands of years back, people used to make pilgrimages to certain areas on the island and kind of pay homage to Tanit. So we've got this cave. People do voice activations in the cave, which is pretty cool. And Tanit is known as the goddess of fertility and kind of feminism. And so it's really interesting as an archetype. There's, the energy on the island is held, and often, sometimes when people come to the island here, they might have a bit of a difficult time, or things aren't flowing as well. And some of the locals might say to you, hey, have you kind of had a chat with Tanit? And people are like, well, what are you talking about? Why would I chat to Tanit? They're like, no, you've got to make yourself known, and you've got to have that relationship with Tanit. And I think that's not just, it's a cool way of thinking about it, but if we take the archetype out of it, why don't we have a relationship with the land anyway?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the disconnection that I think that we as a species have developed, where we're so disconnected from Mother Earth itself. And because that relationship isn't there, I think that humans have just, we've gone too deeply into the disconnect and into technology and into separatism. And and now there is this idea that kind of the ancients, so there's, they were in tune with all of that, and we've lost that part. And I think across the whole planet, humanity has to reconnect with Mother Earth in order to continue to reside here. Because without that connection, it is why we, have the damage to the planet, the damage to our bodies, the damage to one another. So yeah, I think astrology and all of the archetypes is just a way of reconnecting to especially the feminine essences, which have just, have been cut out through so many religious institutions and everything. And I think that is a very interesting thing about Ibiza, that, one is have to reconnect to their feminine essence.
Yeah.
The feminine aspect of themselves to really be able to be there on that island.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, the island itself has got a ratio of, I don't know if this is still true, but 5 women to 1 man. So men, if you're listening and you are interested in finding a woman, come over to Ibiza. But one thing I can say is that women in Ibiza are super strong, and they hold that feminine energy in a really beautiful way. Of course, not everyone, but when I first got here, I was like, wowzers, like the women are super strong here, and they really embody that beautiful feminine energy, which is nice to see. But Erika, just connecting kind of on that thread of us being disconnected, perhaps for folks who don't know you, maybe you can just speak to a little bit about your work, because that's very much one of your passions, is reconnecting people to the energy of the earth through your food, through your recipes, through your teachings. And so perhaps if you could just share a little bit more about your view on connection.
Yeah, and maybe now through even fasting. So I was laughing about the paradox while driving my 1,000-hour driving back, and more clear become the power of reconnection to the abstinence from food. I will explain a little bit more. But as a chef, to suggest to people, what you suggest to me today, chef? Well, fast. That's a little bit ironic, but is getting stronger and stronger for me. Yeah, this connection is has been a tendency that we had to have, because it's simply part of the polarity. To be very connected, we have to feel the very disconnection. So now we are, thanks God, living that extreme of the run, and we are going back more and more as a species, also because we literally stretch this time, the time and the space in this planet in a sort of a dangerous way. But what I do, you can see the reconnection. For example, you were speaking before about the moon. The simple things, as soon as you start again to do things by yourself, so preparing, for example, your meal and preparing your food. For example, I prepare my own kombucha, and every month, if you are aware, you can see that each moon, a new layer, a new mother of kombucha is born. And this is not something that depends on how many times you are pouring the tea or how much sugar you are putting. It's connected to a bigger clock, to a bigger energy, to a bigger order that, if you want or not, you are insert in. And as soon as you reconnect with this clock, with this technology that you are living in, so it's not a matter of a choice, it's just you can choose if you want to make your life simple and in flow, or not in flow, simply a little bit harder, and so disconnect. But once you start to have your vinegar, you start to have your own mother or your own sourdough, you notice the movement of the planet. You notice the energy of the satellite of the planet, that is the moon in our case, because you can see how the water moves and how the expansion and contraction work in front of your eyes, literally, like in your spoon. So it's not something that you have to have a technological instrument to watch in the sky, but you have it in your jar, in your bowl, every day in your kitchen. That's why is for me the way through the reconnection. Or simply, once you put in sprouting your seeds and you start to do it as a process, you will see that if you follow the moon in the sprouting process, then you will have a faster result or a better result. Like I'm speaking about double time, instead of going in a descendant moon. So if you are going in a new moon, so you start to notice it. But it's all about empirical experimentation. So it's make your life that experiment, and don't wait from the others to tell you what to do or what to say, because that's a little bit the problem of the disconnection of the human being. They start to put in the hand of the doctor his health, in the hand of a teacher his way of knowing things. For me, it's always been clear that there is my way, and it's my way. No one can tell me what to think or how to think. You can help me, showing me your way of analyzing and thinking, and maybe it matches with me or not. But it's something that I'm already create to have my own way of understanding and my intelligence. So the school we are in, it's made for create this connection from who you are, a unique planet that connect with unique force, and then act his dance independently from structure, physical structure. So the disconnection, that's why now we need to go through a crumbling of the entire system, because the entire system is create on disconnection. The food industry, like the food industry, that is now an industry, already calling it a food industry. It's painful for me. That is an industry in the last 200 years, 150 years, and is an agriculture industry, agriculture way of eating is only in the last 12,500 years, is something that is not matching the internal DNA and is creating disconnection. Why? The food industry is something that is feeding the last 6 generations. As a human, as we know in this way, with this DNA, so let's say we are around 100,000 generations. So 6 generations of this kind of food is of the industrialized food is destroying, and it's fighting an entire evolution genetically that is made for a different way of eating, a different way of processing food, a different way also for our brain to evolve. So what is going on right now, that we need a change that realign with what we are made for. And that's why the double detox. That's why learning to fast. Because as a chef, I'm taking myself out of the equation and leaving the body, personal body, not mine, but for each person, the intelligence of the body. And so from there, once you get rid of toxin, reconnect with your intuition. And then you start to reconnect with your master, that is yourself. You have all of your master there with you that are waiting for the call. So for me, that's the way of reconnecting. Leave the space for the reconnection to happen, because we have all the tools already there in space.
Yeah, thanks, my love. And that's just interesting on just building on that. So that's kind of the work I do, is really helping people remember. So, you know, my view is helping people understand and giving them tools to say, hey, remember, you are love. The program that I have is called Rise Up in Love. It's because it's remembering, connecting, reconnecting. Because for a very long time, I was disconnected. And I'm not saying I'm fully done and ascended and all that stuff. That's certainly where I'm going. But the work that I know you're doing, Aurora, and obviously Erika, we're all focusing on raising vibration, because we know that reconnecting it's the only game in town. And it's the reason that the systems are crumbling, and everything's kind of falling apart. And it's the sovereignty side of things that in our program we really kind of teach, hey, we're just guiding you, we're not telling you what to do. But like you did, Aurora, you said, you know, I didn't study under anyone, but I had this intense passion for astrology, and I just went for it, and I learned and I learned and I learned. And that's kind of what a master does on the planet, is go for experience, so that you can get the wisdom from the whatever it is, whether it's the traumas, and you release it, get the wisdom and release it, let it go, whatever it might be. And so just coming back to the astrology part then, Aurora, one of the reasons why I reached out and asked for us to have a chat was because one of the things that Erika and I were doing when we were looking at launching Double Detox was, when do we plan these? Because, and this is where I'd really love to kind of dive deeper in with you, Aurora, is, could you help us from an astrological point of view understand these kind of flows? Because we're coming up to eclipse season, which is really interesting. We've got 2 this year. So perhaps you could just start off with the April one, and then maybe we talk about the October one. But it was interesting because Erika and I, we were looking at kind of how we're going to plan Double Detox, and we got this calendar out. And out of all the calendars, Erika made me buy a lunar calendar. And she's like, oh, babe, look at this. There's like loads of eclipse. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, yes, of course, let's start aligning to that. And so we were laughing about that. But then we were like, no, there's a reason for this. There's flow. And then all of it sort of kind of came through. So perhaps you could just speak to that from an astrological point of view for us.
Yeah, so eclipses for me are super interesting, because any type of eclipse And I think with it, when we're talking about, so solar eclipses always happen in conjunction with a new moon, and lunar eclipses always happen in conjunction with a full moon. So this eclipse season coming up is a rather intense one. So I'll share just some of the, I
Oh,
think the one,
change. Yeah,
yeah,
nice.
so the ones in October are going to be a little bit different energetically, but eclipses in general, I find that new moon eclipses, so that will always be a solar eclipse. It's a reset. So I think it's really interesting that this is going to go on right when you're doing the detoxes. It's a complete reset. So whenever we have new moon solar eclipses, and for those of you who might be just totally unfamiliar, maybe, or have never even really dove into your charts before, I would recommend just taking a look at your charts. This particular new moon solar eclipse, which is going to be in Aries, and it's going to be on the 19th and 20th, depending on where you are in the world. For most people, it'll be around the 19th. And it's going to be at the 29th degree of Aries. And so always our new moon eclipses are resets. And depending on the area of your chart, that's going to fall into the particular house, you can get an inkling as to where your reset is occurring. It always kind of begins a new path. You're starting a completely new chapter in some way. And what's very interesting about this eclipse season is that we have a kind of rare, this new moon in Aries is a rather rare one, because they call it a black moon only because we had a new moon in Aries last month under the spring equinox, and that was at 0 degrees Aries. So that was the first degree of Aries. And now we have a second new moon solar eclipse at 29 degrees, which is the final degree. So they're kind of bookends of one another. So whatever was kind of starting around the spring equinox is going to take a whole new direction. And Aries as an archetype is about sovereignty. Aries is fire-based. It is action-based. It's also about passion. If something doesn't light you up, if it is not something that burns that kind of, fire of spirit within you, cut it, especially around this eclipse. And that's why I think the detox is going to be really powerful, because sometimes we don't really even know what lights us up and what the path that we want to take, because there's too many distractions. Like Erika was saying about disconnected, we're too disconnected from ourselves. And sometimes food is a distraction, and sugar and alcohol, it's like it is all a distraction. And sometimes you really can't even get to that seed of yourself and what really you want to do and you love until you cut those things out and really find out who you are. So this particular new moon solar eclipse is going to be a lot about finding out who you are, what lights you up, and kind of getting rid of the stuff that doesn't. Everything that you're just kind of like about, done. Only what you're super excited about and super passionate about. And Aries also, in terms of medical astrology, rules over the brain, the head. So maybe that might be some areas that come up maybe with the detoxes and the fast. If anyone like kind of experiences maybe just increased migraines or anything like that, which I'm sure everybody has different symptoms throughout the detox, but if that does happen, that's very much in line with Aries. Just a complete detox of the brain system and the head in general. So it's going to be a very powerful one, as is the follow-up eclipse, which will be on May 5th. So we have a portal day, a 5/5 portal, and that is going to be a full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. So again, you can take a look at your chart there. I would say wherever the new moon one falls in your chart, that's a reset, that's a new path. This full moon, though, eclipse in Scorpio, which will be on May 5th, that is a huge ending. eclipses are very finalized. They either give you a complete new reset with the new moon, and with the full moons, it's a complete ending of something. Whatever needs to go. And Scorpio as an archetype is the deepest levels of emotional transformation. Scorpio really deals with wanting to purge our systems of emotions that poison us. So we're talking about all the nitty-gritty emotions: rage, bitterness, resentment, old traumas of betrayal, of hurt, like all the really painful stuff. Wants to come out. And I think that that full moon eclipse is going to be a huge purging emotionally, and some area of life is getting a complete ending. And we've been having eclipses in Scorpio for the past 2 years. So you might be able to see a theme running of maybe where those themes for the past 2 years have been. And so that's why I'm like, this eclipse season is going to be very interesting. It's going to be very intense. You've got a completely new start with Aries wanting to be like, you need to just follow your passion, follow what lights you up, completely detox negative thinking, the doubts, what's holding you back, where you don't believe in yourself, where you don't think you are capable. All of that needs to go, because Aries is very powerfully wanting to move us forward on our path. And that full moon Scorpio eclipse is like, this old chapter here, this has got to go. This has got to end for your restart. Now, the eclipses in October actually are going to be pretty interesting, because they're going to be completely different. We're going to have Libra and Taurus as the eclipsers there. But interestingly enough, those are going to be more geared towards comfort zones. Both Libra and Taurus are ruled by Venus, the divine feminine energy. And so some of the purges there, I think, in October are going to be about letting go of where we overindulge or we've become a little too comfortable and need to kind of, go outside a little bit, push the boundaries a little bit, and kind of let go of everything that's too comfortable, too overindulging a little bit too much, and let some of those things go. And there's going to be a big focus on, I think, relationship dynamics during that October eclipse, because both Libra and Taurus are very geared towards partnerships. So maybe just a realigning of self-value, self-worth, things like that. But yeah, we're definitely going to have some big shifts in these eclipse seasons, because we're actually shifting from the past 2 years having our eclipses be in Taurus and Scorpio, which we're having those final 2 this year. But moving forward, we're just beginning our eclipse seasons of Aries and Libra, because for the next 2 years, we will have Libra Aries eclipses. So those will be 2 very strong archetypes. And the last time that we had the North Node in Aries, which will be happening in July, was in 2005 to the end of 2006. So we can also kind of feel back into that time period of a little bit of a pattern or cycle that might be coming back around from 2005 to 2006.
Okay, wow, thank you. I'm like question. So awesome. Thank you for that. So just stopping on the detoxing of the head as such, that part, which sounds like it's the first eclipse. That's so interesting to hear, because I used to experience migraines when I was younger. And the doctors said, cut out all red meats, red wine. I wasn't drinking red wine at that age, which was fine. But kind of all caffeine-y stuff. And I was in medication for a bit, but it was kind of, I think, more stress related, just as a youngster growing up. But what I found, and then when I started kind of detoxing my body, my migraines disappeared. I now, however, have what I kind of just checking with my guides and stuff is ascension symptoms. And one of the things, this is a cool recipe that Erika learned from her granny, is called the canarino recipe, which is a canary. It's called canarino because it's yellow. It's like a little tea that you make with some cool ingredients. And what that does, Amore, actually, do you want to explain what the canarino does, and then I'll kind of loop back into the story of the headaches.
I love to hear you explaining the recipe. And you did it for me this morning, and yeah, later on. Perfect. So if you want to keep on going, I love it.
Okay, I'll keep on
I
going.
love to hear from you.
Erika's testing me here. So it's a really cool recipe. I'm not going to share the recipe only because it's that simple, but and super tasty. But what it does is it actually opens up a lot of your pathways, let's say, in the head. And it's designed to kind of just provide relief for the head, because when we start to go into detox, you know, your different organs start kind of just letting go of things. And as we progress through our program's 3 weeks, and we go gently into it, deliberately so, because there's so much that comes up. And so as we start to kind of reduce the food intake, all of a sudden you don't have that chocolate bar to hold on to, or you don't have that coffee to hold on to. And there's no judgment in those things. It's all cool, but it's just letting go of that for a while, coming back to yourself, coming back inside. And so the canarino recipe is super helpful to kind of help with that opening. But what I've also been experiencing is the ascension symptoms. And so I experience this very much so when there's a lot of light coming into the planet. And I see this through measuring the space tools and watching all those indicators like the Schumann's resonance and all of that. And so for those folks who don't know, there's a lot of light, love light coming onto the planet, which is awesome. And that's what's raising the vibration. And so that's what Aurora kind of said earlier on. She said, you know, if we're not keeping up with this frequency, then, you know, there'll be an exit. And so, and that's all fine. It's not a thing. It's just part of the cycle anyways. But how I experience that, I experience a lot of headaches, and there's like pressure, and almost I'll have different parts. Not only that, I also experience the past life traumas coming up. So there was a stage where Erika looked at me the one day and she was like, babe, looks like your face has been like chopped off. And I was like, what? And I had a headache at the time, and she said, no, I can kind of see this energy. And so I checked with my guides, and they said, yeah, when you know, in however many past lives ago, you had these kind of you know, head traumas. And so a lot of these energies will be releasing as we continue to go through. And my sense is it sounds like the eclipses will kind of amplify that letting go of that energy. Am I right in understanding that? Is that kind of the vibe there?
Definitely. And I think probably because along with the eclipse being in Aries, we have Chiron, who is an asteroid, but he represents, his name is the wounded healer, and he kind of represents the wounds that we hold as a humanity. And he's also in Aries and has been for the past couple of years. So he is helping to, exactly like you said, bring up those traumas in those areas. So the head being a big, and sinuses.
Yes. Yeah.
So
sinuses,
headaches, old trauma from maybe the head, or injuries to the head or to the face, could definitely come up as well.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
And so I think what's also interesting on the detox side is when you do actually get into ketosis state, part of your brain cells actually start to repair themselves. And I think this is what, as I continue the detox journey and these programs, as we continue kind of to hold the space for people, I go deeper and deeper into Erika's side of the knowledge as well. And I'm just like, wow, like the brain's repairing, and wow, like the stem cells are regrowing and all this. And it's been a kind of absolute fascinating journey to go down. And I think you and I were kind of mentioning this when we first started our conversation together. You said, wow, Mish, I feel like like people are really going to start to wake up and need this more and more, right?
Yes, I feel so, because you know, from my side, of course, I do astrology, but I'm very focused on the kind of energy side of things, which, you know, you've got to do both. You've got to do the physical things and the energetic. But I've known for quite a time, because part of my journey before, when I started to awaken, was astrology was a big part of that, and open, and was my beautiful kind of art to learning all these things. But I actually went on kind of a 8-year detox. I was vegetarian, went vegan for a short period of time for about 8 years. During my initial awakening, I then started to incorporate back meat and coffee and these different things. But I think I needed that amount of time, because I could feel how much density was in my body from just pharmaceuticals, you know, any kind of toxins. And I think without that, I wouldn't have, the brain wouldn't be able to adjust to the frequencies coming in. So it's like, I can work, and I love, you know, sharing with people the energetic side of things. But I think when this mass awakening starts hitting, the very first thing, before they even get into the spiritual energetic, they're going to need to detox. The first thing they're going to have to do, because their bodies are too dense. And like you said, the brain, it needs to rewire, because those solar flares and the CMEs and everything incoming affects the brain. And it needs to start repairing, so that we don't want people to kind of you know, become so overwhelmed, or the brain glitches out that it can't integrate these things. So yeah, I think that what you guys are doing is going to become so important for just anyone who's going to be on the journey, is going to have to do this first.
Yeah, and it's and thank you for sharing that, because I was just re-listening to a recording from our last program, and we had a doctor on the program, so a friend of mine's dad, and his comment was, you know, Mish, I'm starting, he said, I never thought I'd have so much mental clarity and just mental stability through going through this program with you. And he said, I'm mentally coping with things better. So kind of that's why Erika and I do both, right? We do the food, like the scrubbing of the cells, and that's where Erika kind of leads us really beautifully in the recipes and all of that sort of stuff. But then you need the stability of the meditation, the breath work in the morning, and then the tools, the communication tools, or the making sense of, holy smokes, these, you know, emotions or whatever else is coming up. But just coming back to our points of sovereignty, and kind of, I think it was us stepping into Aries, that energy of no longer, and Erika mentioned this beautifully at the beginning, no longer can we rely on other people telling us what to do. And it's not about knowing everything, it's not that. But you know, Erika and I talk a lot about this. It's the Lazarus space, or the Lazarus space. You know, it's we'll give you a hand and we'll guide you, but you've got to take that step. You've got to step into, oh shit, this is my body. Like I've got to detox it. I've got to stop eating this shit, or just for a period. You can go back to the craziness. That's all cool. It's not a problem. But be aware. Yeah, and that's all it is. It's creating that awareness. And I think that's what the doctor was saying. He was like, Mish, you know, in all my years, I can't believe the clarity that comes from this, and how good I do feel. And like you said, you know, then you can come back into your journey and say, oh, okay, I might have a coffee here, or I might have a glass of wine here, and all of that, and that's all fine. But decide what it is that you're willing to allow, for example. So now, for example, I cannot live in a city any longer. Like I was in London, in South Africa, in Durban for a bit, and my body felt like it was being beat just from the energies. And so I think that's also very interesting to kind of take into account. It's the sovereignty, and people are going to have to take that step towards whatever their healing journey is.
Yeah. And you know, something I just realized as you were talking, I was thinking about it, was, you know, this particular eclipse season here in April, May, is kind of a polarity to the eclipse season that we will have in October. So Aries ruling the head, the sinuses, all of that. Aries is ruled by Mars, which is the divine masculine energy. And it's exactly like you said, you've got to take action. You've got to have the self-will and the sovereignty to make those choices for yourself, to commit to them and to follow through with them. Now, Scorpio is also ruled by Mars. So
Okay.
both of these eclipses are very much working with our internal divine. We all have the internal masculine of taking action, committing to something, really going all in on what we're seeking to do. And Scorpio ruling the emotional body. And it does have a connection as well to the sacral chakra. So also around that full moon time, there might be some purging in terms of like sacral energy, or maybe just old wounds, things like that in that area. But then the bookend eclipses in October and November are Libra and Taurus, who are both ruled by Venus. So we've got these two ruled by Mars, these two ruled by Venus. So in many ways, I think it should be interesting. I'd like to, we'll follow up. I'd like to hear how your programs go throughout those two, because they're working with completely different energies. One is with the masculine, the internal fire, and then the other one is with Venus and the feminine and the softness, but the kind of, creative and going outside the comfort zone and really kind of embracing life and not keeping any walls up.
Yeah, wonderful. And so, and thank you for that. That's what a cool awareness, right? When you kind of take a bird's eye view and like, whoa, this is really cool. And how I'm curious to kind of hear your views, Aurora, on how these eclipses then plug into the wider view of 23. So for me, and we did you did my reading early 23, which I was particularly keen on because I wanted to get a sense of that. But my sense is that 23 is a firecracker year for sure. And it's the year of letting go, letting go, letting go. And if you don't, like literally these ball and chains going to be very heavy to continue holding on. And so perhaps you could just maybe speak to how these eclipses fit into the overall view of 2023 for us.
Yeah, well, tying it in with the numerology, this year is a 7 year, which is a lot about going within and really kind of not deleting, but, pulling away from the external and really going within and finding out, who am I? What are my passions? Am I self-loving? Am I taking care of myself? Am I finally making the changes that I know I need to make to live the life I want to live? And there is this kind of firecracker energy and this intensity to where, within the numerology cycles, we've had a lot of years now where we've been kind of doing our self-love development, trying new things, doing inner work. But now we are coming to, I guess this year is a big crossroads year. And some of the things that if we haven't been able to let them go or transform them or dissolve them, they will just be ripped away to help us. It's not, sometimes it feels jarring and it feels jolting, but it's kind of this year where whatever needs to go needs to go. And if we're not going to if we take the action to let it go, we're going to also get a blessing in terms of a little bit of a boost on the path. If we're holding on and it has to be ripped away from us, I think, we might get a little triggered by it, but it's all for the highest. But this year March was particularly huge. I think we had two of the biggest planetary shifts that we look at in astrology, which was Saturn shifted out of Aquarius, which he had been in since 2020. So the whole era of lockdowns, COVID, all of that was under Saturn and Aquarius. We finally exited that, and Saturn is now in Pisces, which is bringing us a newfound sense of focus on health and wellness, spiritual. Saturn will be there for another 2.5 years. So there will be this collective shift into focusing more on the spiritual health and wellness and our physical health and wellness. So this is kind of a good time that we regain that focus. But Pluto also shifted out of Capricorn, and Pluto shifted there originally in 2008. So for the past like 15 years, it's been Pluto is our power. It's how we use power. Are we using it for good? Are we using it for negative? And when you misuse power, you usually have to lose something in that process to regain integrity with it. So we've been testing the integrity of our systems for 15 years, which, as we know, they have not passed the integrity test. So they will have to take a fall. But Pluto did shift into Aquarius in March. So we have Pluto in Aquarius right now, which is the last time we had Pluto in Aquarius. This is my favorite, like, historical astrology was in 1777. So it was right after the US claimed independence. The US Constitution was birthed under Pluto and Aquarius. The French Revolution happened under Pluto and Aquarius. The US Revolution as well as the Haitian Revolution. So we had a lot of that revolution energy the last time. So we are having this time around, I think it's more of a spiritual revolution, not so much a taking up arms, although, with it, there's always that thrown into the mix.
Sure.
But I think humanity, the rest is undergoing a cellular revolution. We are truly, I think, in the process of this light body crystalline transformation on a deep cellular level. Now, Pluto is going to move back into Capricorn on June 11th. So we have Pluto in this short period of time here, giving us the first doses of this new power in humanity, this new power to revolutionize ourselves, but also to heal, also to go through this crystalline process where our bodies are really getting rid of that density and we're integrating light on a whole new level. And Pluto's going to go back into Capricorn from June to the end of the year, in which I feel that will be the final collapse of the systems. He's given these systems 15 years to come back into integrity, to fix what needed to be fixed. As we know, that really wasn't done. So I feel the systems as a whole are on their last leg here. And there very well might be a massive kind of chaotic collapse of sorts this year. But that's okay, because I think humanity is ready to rise up and kind of lead themselves. That's what we're talking about, like leading yourself, being your own master, kind of not looking to external authority anymore. And that's going to line up beautifully with July. In mid-July, we will have the North Node of Destiny for the collective shifting into Aries. So collectively for the next 2 years, we're also getting really pushed in that direction of sovereignty, divine action, really leading ourselves and no longer just giving power away or looking to any external authorities to tell us how to live or what to do or anything like that. So it is a bit of a crossroads year, but ultimately I feel we're being pushed very strongly into this sense of sovereignty, of being really divine beings. That's to reclaim our connection with Mother Earth, to reclaim our connection to spirit, to source, to be divine human beings. We no longer can live in this denial or disconnection and kind of very jaded way of being. And so it's a lot intertwined, but this year is the year of either stepping up, or you might have the rug ripped out, but I don't think anyone in this group that would be for. This would be maybe for those who kind of are just really holding on to the last of the old. And they need that little bit of, catalyst, and they'll get it. But this is the year, because I really feel next year is going to be a huge transitionary year of really building a whole new way of life, a whole new system structure, whatever we want to call it, new earth, a transition into a new way of being. So this is the year where some things may really fall apart, and we're going to have to just ride the waves. But we are being prepared, I think, for an entirely new paradigm to begin here. I really do feel that in my bones.
Yeah, and I think anyone who you talk to who has been on this path for, let's say, a certain, like a fair amount of time, they're like, yeah, this is it. This is it. And the reason we know that is because our universe is a fractal universe, right? And so if we just look within, you spoke about testing systems and all of that. I know my own systems have been tested. So when I work with my coaching clients, I talk about poking all the programs. Let's go poke all the axioms, because when we poke what I call untruth, so something that's not true, but I like the word untruth. When we poke the untruth, guess what happens? It's wobbly and it falls over. And that's what's happening now. So I think everyone, COVID allowed us to kind of sit back and go, hey, you're not going to the office, you're not going anywhere. You're going to sit and you're going to look at your shit for a while. And everyone's like, no, I want to go back to the office. I want to go back down to the pub and all of that. And it's like, no, you're going to sit. And not only that, we're going to put you on Zoom.
Yeah.
And so you sit on Zoom in like calls, like work calls, and you're now not even looking at yourself, you're looking at your colleagues, you're now also being faced with that reflection.
Yes.
And so it was kind of like everywhere. It was like bang, bang, bang. And I've been on the personal growth journey for a while now. But it was really like, as you said, that Capricorn energy was like really turned up the heat of pushing all these systems and saying, okay, what's falling? And I guess this is just a word of confidence to those folks who are perhaps scared and kind of pushing these old programs, these old axioms that they've been leaning on, and they're like, wow, this is my old friend that keeps me in what I call the shit pit. It's like, no. And I heard this from a beautiful channeling from Adonis, actually. He was saying, we can no longer have the luxury of doubt. Like when I was like, dang, the luxury of doubt, to use doubt as an excuse to say, okay, I'm going to doubt myself, so I'm not going to, let's say in my case, I'm not going to step up and create the double detox program with Erika, because I know our work can help people raise their vibration and let go of some of their stuff and make this journey to the next level a little bit easier. And it's not because I know better or that I'm more amazing. It's just, hey, I've got some cool tools that work for me and have helped me get out of the shit pit. And these tools were, someone had, when I learned these tools, it's like a rope being thrown into the shit pit, but you got to climb out yourself by using the tools. And it's not reading a cool book and going, oh, that was great, like put it on the shelf. You're like, no, like, how do I climb that ladder again? How do I climb that ladder? And you got to practice and do it. And it's so interesting. We're starting Double Detox tomorrow, and people are texting me going, Mish, like, I'm scared. And I'm like, what are you scared of? And they're like, well, I'm scared of, like, not to have my coffee. And I'm like, you coffee, sister, like, you could, there's a whole lot more coming. And so, but one thing I would say is the amount of love that is on the planet right now, we have like absolutely nothing to even vaguely fear. And the more you lean into that change and the more you let go of the doubt, truly, the more beautiful this journey becomes. And the cool thing is with energy, and because we're powerful creators, the better it gets, guess what? The better it gets. And so if I keep looking at what I would say the good stuff, if you like, or hey, I'm letting go of that, letting go, choosing that route, it's just going to get better. And yeah, you're going to get knocks, of course, but that's the game of life. That's what we signed up when we came here. And so I like it has been a hell of a journey, and I think 23 is going to be a ringer, and the planets are kind of confirming that all as well. And so fascinating times. Is there anything else in kind of, perhaps maybe if we stretch it out a little bit further from 23, is there anything else worth mentioning?
Well, I feel next year is really where I think things are. I've said to people, observe what's happening in your life between the end of March and June 11th, right? So from the last couple of weeks until June 11th, just get a little gauge and kind of see what might have. Again, you can look at your charts and see where Aquarius might be there and to where Pluto is touching, because he's really the star of the show for next year, because we're getting him as a little bit of a introduction right now. But anything you might notice of, in your life happening, changing, you internally changing, next year will be amplified because Pluto will move into Aquarius for almost the whole year. He does do a brief little stint back in Capricorn again, but it's only for about a month or 2 or 6 weeks. So, but next year, I really feel is going to be, it's got to be an overhaul. That's how I see it. It's got to be an overhaul of the whole collective consciousness and the way we work together, the way we live, the way we eat, the way we function, the way we work. It all has to be completely overhauled. Like nothing we can really take with us anymore from the current system, because none of it really works. I don't know like that any of it's really going to survive. So I think exactly like you said, I think we're getting the big boost this year with the Aries energy. And we've had a lot of planets in Aries. Jupiter's been in Aries for a year. So everything has been directing us to gain sovereignty, because just like you said, I really like that phrase that we don't have, the luxury of doubt anymore, because everyone has the codes.
Mhm.
Everyone has a code for something. And it's only the self-doubt or the linear thinking of, well, it's not the best time for me to do XYZ, or, when I make more money, I can do XYZ. There's a lot of excuses that the mind comes up with to hold us back from bringing our piece of the puzzle and our coding to the world. And that overhaul next year is going to require everyone's piece of the puzzle. So what I've been telling people in my sessions is, if you really delete all of your external linear thinking of, your job and all of the things you do normally because you might have to, and just, pay bills, and we got to do the things we got to do, is really sit down with yourself and say, if I could do anything, and it didn't matter, what would I want to contribute to the world? What would my piece be? And even if that piece is, I just love talking to people, I love holding space for them, I love offering them a kind, some people that's really what they're here to do. They're here to be space holders. They're here to offer smiles and kindness, and that's their piece of the puzzle. But whatever lights you up and whatever is like, oh my God, that would be my dream, kind of start letting it percolate, because this year, I think destiny is going to take many of us into whatever that path is, because next year it really needs to be all hands on deck. We're not going to be giving our power away to a select few beings of like, oh, you guys are going to run it. You guys are going to put this.
Yeah.
It's going to be everybody's piece doing this overhaul together. So I think this year is unlocking a lot of people's destinies, getting really clear on what your destiny is. And then next year, being ready to go for it. And whatever prep we need to do for that, hype yourself up, do like get your heart in the right place to where you believe in yourself and go for it. And I think if we start taking even those little steps this year, you don't have to go 0 to 100. You can if you want, but you can also just take little intentional steps towards that dream, and the planetary energy is going to just bring the full support. You might think you're just taking a small step towards your dream, and all of a sudden an opportunity, bam, 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 starts coming, because the universe is going to need us all in a place to give those codes, to provide whatever it is. Only each person, you can provide a unique spark that nobody else can. So yes, I think that, in a kind of a more somber tone, which I don't always like to focus on, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but just from my feeling, is that there might be a kind of split where there are those who are really kind of moving into the destiny and helping to create the new. And there will be some souls who just aren't destined to go through this process. And they may have to transition over, you know, and help from that side. And so there might be some chaos and maybe what appears as death, but nobody who's here right now and nobody who's choosing, you know, love and life and to pursue the new paradigm is going to be part of that. But I think there will be a little bit of a deep contrast this year and next year. It's going to become really clear where, like you said, people are going to move away from spaces that don't support them, whether that be cities, environments, homes, whatever that may be. And there's going to all of a sudden just be a really big split, and you're just going to have to allow that split to happen because new energies will come in to support you. But that's kind of where this Scorpio eclipse is looking like whatever's old and dead, it just is going to get cut out, and it's for the best. So
and I like your kind of verbiage there of saying kind of deep contrast. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. Because, you know, and especially, so Adamus, again, I've been really enjoying the channelings there. Just so if folks want to check it out, it's crimsoncircle.com and just go through their library. Super cool stuff. And, you know, in March time, just past, just before the equinox, or just after the equinox, yeah, around that kind of space. And then before the 23rd, where you spoke about those big kind of 2 planetary changes. There was that day in between, it was the 22nd of March, and Adamus talks about, that was Heaven's Cross, and that was the openings. That was the openings of, they call it the veil, if you like, lifting. And what that's, how they explain it is, the heaviness is lifted. And so the reason I think it's helpful to mention here is that even though there's it's gonna feel like deep contrast, you can still, because you're letting go of the density, depending on what you're doing, detoxing and kind of where your focus, because your focus is going to be key. And that's really the big thing that I encourage people to focus on is, what are you focusing on? What are you looking at? Because ultimately, you are, as the observer, you create your reality, and it's going to be really brought home in a strong and powerful way from now going forward. Now, that shouldn't be something that scares us, because all of a sudden, the gravity that was holding those negative, what I call bullshit thoughts of I'm not good enough, the doubt, all of that, all of a sudden that gravity is lifted. And I think what a lot of the media does, or social media, or even the alternative channels at the moment, they're all like, oh my God, this is going to be crazy, it's going to be crazy. No one's talking about like, hey, hold on, our gravity's lifted. Imagine what we can create if and when Aurora fully steps into her power, when Mish fully steps into her power, when Erika fully steps into her power. And that is what I really get excited about, because again, just coming back to the thread of the better it gets, the better it gets. Because ultimately everything is a choice, and it doesn't matter what you choose. You can choose to hold on to the negativity, and you can choose to stay in the deep, deep contrast and have a bumpier ride. That's okay, but know that all it is it's a decision to let go. And once you do, it'll be way easier to kind of groove through that. So yeah, exciting time. So thank you so much for that. I just, for the last kind of couple of minutes, I'm gonna perhaps just invite any folks that are on the line who would like to ask Aurora or Erika or myself a related question in their field of expertise. So Erika on the food, Aurora on the astrology, and Mish on the kind of energy coaching. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question?
Could I just ask a question, Mish?
Yeah.
I'm interested. So a lot of information. I'm processing it with my brain at the moment, which is a bit foggy. We'll get better from tomorrow on. You just mentioned the website, but I didn't catch it. Really, it was
I'll send you a text, Karen. I'll send
okay.
you a
That's
text,
oh, that's great. And I would like to thank Aurora. I know you both, Erika and Mish, and we will see to each other tomorrow. And I would like to thank Aurora for all the information. It's really interesting. I was writing it down, and I was, oh, Aries, that's my mom. Scorpio, that's myself. So that's part of the conditioning and all that stuff. And then, oh, fortunately, my moon sign is Aquarius. So I'm gonna reread all that kind of stuff. But thank you so much, Aurora. It was really, really interesting to hear of this, and it's not completely new, but I'm not knowledgeable. So thank you for that to make me more knowledgeable together with Mish and Erika. And I'm really dying to start tomorrow again with a double detox number 2 for me this year. So
Yeah,
rock, we're gonna rock 2023.
yeah, exactly. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And Karen's one of our wonderful participants. Karen actually has a beautiful story. She had a stroke just over 5 years ago. And as you can imagine, a stroke really puts challenges in one's life. And Karen's done a beautiful job of really just taking that step towards holistic healing on her journey. You know, in her testimonial with me, she was explaining, she's like, Mish, you know, I understand that the stroke's about the body, but as I kind of continued on this journey, I understood it's not just about looking at the veins and the flow of the brain and all of that sort of stuff. It's what am I doing with my food? What am I doing with how my heart feels? What am I doing with following my passion, as you mentioned? And Karen has a bunch of beautiful young daughters, who one of them has done some awesome work with Erika on her Soul Method course in Holland. She's been chefing and learning so many cool things, and cooking at their retreats place in France. Karen runs a place in France. And so again, I think just notable mentions to people like Erika and Aurora, and now myself stepping into it is, you know, we're getting into it and we're like, hey, we're going to share some stuff, and let's help kind of spread that net, like Dana, Karen's daughter, who's now cooking, following in Erika's footsteps and learning as much as she can in the high vibrational kind of way, and looking after Mother Earth way. And so it's really beautiful to see the youngsters stepping up as well. Erika, did you want to say something?
Yeah, and even more, because to wrap it up, I listen, I'm exploding with information, so I will share a few with all of you just to wrap it up. And very interesting, absolutely, the fact that we are in Aries. Aries is always this frontal zone, not is the one that initiate and one that enter, is also the frontal lobe, the frontal cortex, and is the one that get frozen in case of addiction. And I've been in Italy in my family that I consider eating quite healthy. I could see the start of all addiction that our industry is placing everywhere. First addiction of all, the combination of sugar and fat together, classical beginning of your morning with the croissant. And it's something that in nature is, you don't find it anywhere. It doesn't exist. So you were speaking, no? We were speaking about it. Yeah, you can do it. You want to do it. Yeah, but if you're addicted, you can't. That's why the importance of cutting this cord with the addiction. This literally allow the frontal cortex, the Aries. That's why it's so exciting to go and clean in parallel with this big master helping us, because it's actually allow the frontal cortex to be free on his own, taking decision and choose the direction, because this is what it does, and is also where the third eyes take place. But first of all, we have to cut I saw myself today. I have a huge headache, just recovering from just being in Milano, and just receive and be submersed and surrounded, and see also the little one, like 3, 4, 5 years old, that are forced to have a snack, to have a merenda, as they call it. That's the beginning of the end, because as in our DNA, 5 meals a day are killer. So it's what is actually keeping us trapped. So really looking forward to spread more this insight, this knowledge, and help people, because literally it's enough a fast of 5 days to change your life. So that's because it's literally give you that clarity, that openness, that space to understand who you are. So yeah, thank you for this talk and exchange. Thank you, Aurora. Thank you, Mish.
Thank you, my love. It's always such beautiful words. And I think just ending on that, it's really coming back to yourself, and that's that void, and we experience it. It's so interesting, and we've got a group on Telegram for folks who are doing the detox with us. And in the beginning, the chat is like week 1, daga 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 daga. Week 2, daga 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 daga. Week 3, beautiful. It's just silence, because everyone's gone inside, and they're like, wow, okay, I'm really having to look inside now. And all these things come up, and Erika and I are like, where did they go? Like, whoa, you know. And it was fascinating to experience. And even just as I was editing the calls and listening to our own tone of voice, fascinating to hear. We're in week 3, and as we start the fast, we go to a liquid fast, so we don't do kind of pure craziness, or not craziness, but just that for me would be like pure craziness. But Erika's put some really awesome recipes in, and the energy levels, and as you start to hit ketosis, are absolutely awesome. But the silence that comes with it is like, and I think that's where the reprieve comes from all the noise. And so I think, yeah, babe, you're right. Like the coming back, those 5 days literally can change your life. And you're rebuilding literally your cells. And so thank you for doing this work with me, my love. I truly find it blessed, find we are blessed. And as we kind of continue on this journey, it just gets more and more beautiful as we go along. And to Aurora, thank you for doing your work. I know you're always traveling around and doing what you do, but it's been a wonderful conversation. And if you're up for it, maybe we do a follow-up before the next October eclipse season.
Yes, I would love to. Yes. And then and let me know how, this one goes. I'm interested of the intensity or just how people feel. I find it like fascinating when maybe they have an idea of the astrology, if that, impacts their detox. But yeah, I'd love to do another one before October.
Yeah, super. So for folks who are looking to follow Erika, she's on Instagram, Erika_Tangari. I'll put that in the show notes. Aurora, where can folks find a little bit more about yourself?
Well, they can visit our Telegram channel, and so I can send you the Telegram link to.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah.
But I'll drop it if they want to find me there. And I have a little astrology Telegram too that I just drop like daily little updates. So I can send you that too if people want to just kind of learn a little bit here and there along the way.
Yeah, wonderful. And I'm reworking my website, which is riseupin.love. We're just kind of focusing on the double detox, and then I'll get that up. But double detox is doubledetox.online. It's nice and easy. And that's, our program is all online focused, but you can join a live container for 3 weeks, or you can opt to do it yourself and enjoy the ride alone. But we always say the ride is more fun together. So we've got one in April and then one in October, which wow, I'm totally fascinated to see kind of what comes out of this. So Aurora, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your travels up in Alabama. Really appreciate your time. And to those folks who made the effort to join the call, I see you and appreciating you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you all.
Take care, everyone.